Thank you for that introduction. When we're confronted with a new technology, it's a Silicon Valley cliche to always ask, but can it scale? Dr. Patrick O'Riordan, Global Head of BioBrew, the question of scale is precisely what spurred you and AB InBev to create BioBrew. Can you give us a 2-second version of what actually is BioBrew?
Yeah, thanks very much, Paige. Essentially, what BioBrew aims to do is to bring precision fermentation to commercial scale. So really applying, I guess, a lot of the technologies and sensibilities that we've developed in ABI over several centuries, I guess, at this point, and really to apply to this new technology space to usher in, I guess, a new generation of alternative protein and alternative bioproducts through manufacturing.
Right. And Arturo Elizondo, co-founder and CEO of the Every Company. You're an early partner with BioBrew and an early partner of SOSV as well. You're working with BioBrew to scale up precision fermentation of your animal-free proteins. Arturo, can you tell us a bit about Every Company's mission?
Yeah. We exist to shut down the last factory farm on Earth and accelerate the world's transition to animal-free protein. And so for us, we leverage precision fermentation because we can make the same exact proteins that are found in nature in animal products, but produce them using fermentation at large scale. And so for me, I felt that it was an incredibly attractive technology to use to solve some of the world's biggest problems because of the fungibility and scalability benefits that the technology imparts. And we've been around for almost 8 years and have launched quite a few products. And so we're excited to hit this next phase of large scale production.
Right. Patrick and Arturo, thank you for joining me today as we talk about scale in this brave new world of alternative proteins. I think we can agree that this is a path to sustainably addressing the dietary needs and wants of 10 billion people in the coming decades. So thanks again for joining me. I really want to start with a very, very basic question. Can each of you give me a number that means scale to you?
Yeah, sure. I think many different ways of kind of quantifying or describing scale, but I think if you look at just in terms of protein, I guess, the number that we use is in terms of the addressable market for protein-based products, it's around 550 million metric tons today, but that'll grow to about 750 million tons by 2030, So, and if you look at kind of, animal-based agriculture in general, I think the number is probably about 1.5 trillion tons of animal-based products are produced today, to feed the planet. So no matter what way we look at it or we carve it up, in terms of alternative protein, I think scale is going to be required to, to kind of deliver this as a viable and alternative solution. So, we're the world's largest brewer, so we understand scale and day in, day out, we produce our products at enormous scale. And I think this type of sensibility is what's going to be required in terms of alternative protein and to, I guess, help usher in a sustainable era of food production.
Mm-hmm. Arturo, when you're thinking about your long-term commercial scale, are you talking about 550 million metric tons?
Yeah, we are. And ultimately, I think the way that I see scale is like, what is the minimum amount of scale that we need to, validate the technology and the platforms, right? To enable, to really then kind of hit the go button in terms of large scale production. And I think to Patrick's point, and to your point, Pei, that is ultimately our goal. The question here is, achieving that next inflection point when it comes to large scale production. But yes, that's why we exist. And I mean, these markets are just incredibly massive. And people like to say, like, oh, the alternative protein space is crowded. These companies are less than 1% of the incumbent industries. Like in the egg market, 99.8% of the egg market are eggs. There is these companies, however many number there are, I think there's like 60 or something, they're less than 0.2%. Impossible and Beyond, as big as they are still less than 1% of the meat market combined. And so when I think about scale, it's the magnitude and what we're up against is massive. We're up against an incredibly scalable technology, which are growing animals in factory farms. That's what we're using today, and that's what we have to go up against. And so we need massive scale production to be able to even make a dent, even a small dent, to do so.
It's interesting, Arturo. I know every company is taking kind of this scaled approach to and taking a combined approach in terms of your offtake and working in a B2B ingredient play, as well as some more forward-facing, consumer-facing partnerships. I myself have had the opportunity to try some macarons from Chantal Guillon, and even maybe have your new pulp culture beverage here sitting on my desk. So tell me a little bit about how different scales play into your approach to these commercialization.
Yeah. Well, one thing is, like, how do we work with what we have and really like make the most out of make lemonade out of the lemons, quite literally, and in terms of, how do we use, ultimately scale is the name of the game. We need large scale production to be able to really meaningfully supply all of the big multinationals that we work with. So the way that we're set up is that we work with some of the largest food companies in the world and essentially, allow them to replace their existing animal products, in this case, eggs, or, typically like whey proteins that they would use to fortify protein products with beverages. And so that's the long-term plan for all of these customers. We need really large, meaningful scale, and they're buying in the millions of kilograms. And so, ultimately, that will need to wait until we can actually have the capacity to supply them, and getting that kind of production takes a couple of years. So until then, essentially, how do we use the scarcity of the product to our advantage, right? And so part of it is that we can be really selective in who we partner with, and how do we generate and essentially hack demand, build and create products that prove the technology, that prove the consumer demand, and really like prove out the business model, which in my case, I'm a firm believer that we need to completely reimagine what it means to be a B2B company in the 21st century. Like, I don't believe in in being this no-name company that no one has ever heard of, and that, ultimately your destiny depends on someone else and some other company to dictate, what your success is going to be. For us, I'm a firm believer that people want these kinds of products. And so if we can partner with companies to tell the right story, because this is a new technology in terms of getting, in terms of the public really knowing what we're doing, I thought it was really important that we are able to have a seat in being able to help tell that story, to get the market not just to accept what we're doing, but also to embrace it as a new path forward and as how food should be made, not how it has to be made.
Patrick, it's really interesting to look at BioBrew as it is a development that was created at AB InBev, which is renowned as a massive global beer and beverage business, and maybe disrupting animal agriculture and protein production doesn't immediately seem like it aligns well with the core business. Can we take a step back in time and talk a little bit about the genesis of BioBrew and really how you all thought about the business alignment and the market validation that you'd need to see in order for BioBrew to be a successful investment for AB InBev?
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting journey, Pei. I think it kind of goes back maybe to about 2015 when we created a breakthrough innovation group called ZX Ventures in ABI. And really one of the key purposes of that group, I guess, was to kind of really look at our core capabilities and understand how they can be applied, in meaningful ways in new domains to solve massive problems, So, and I guess around the same time then as well, we really saw kind of the kind of commercial evolution, I guess, of the next iteration of precision fermentation. So which is synthetic biology, and the ability of that technology to produce large molecules. So in essence, food proteins or things like, monoclonal antibodies, these types of new and exciting kind of developments leveraging that technology. So, going back to around 2015, it was, folks like Arturo and people who are applying this technology started to reach out to us and they said, hey, listen, we'll need to be able to produce essentially these new types of food molecules at the scale to which you guys produce beer today, and so we thought that was very interesting, so we had a closer look at that. And the more we've looked at it and the more we've kind of, developed BioBrew to really go out and validate that, we've kind of looked at it through multiple lenses, I would say, Pace. So you can look at it through obviously the technology and our ability to apply some of the unique technologies that we have in ABI. So things like downscale modeling, looking at our whole supply chain, access to feedstock, that type of thing. But also, I guess, if you look at our footprint as a company, right? So we have a distributed footprint as a global company. So we are a global company, but we operate very much at a local level. So the majority of what we produce is sourced and consumed locally. So we work with local farmers right across the planet. Local regulatory bodies. We access local markets, and when we looked at what the future of food production might be, we think it's going to be very much localized and distributed. So our footprint, we've 260 breweries globally, verticalized operations in greater than 50 countries. And brewing as an industry, I guess, is one of the last kind of industries that has, maintained this kind of distributed footprint. If you look at other industries like pharma, for example, it's been consolidated. Production has been consolidated to just a few regions globally. But food production needs to be local, and so considering that footprint and all of our kind of stakeholders that we've well established, over many years, I think it gives us kind of a great platform to help reimagine what this new future of food production might look like. So having the ability then to bring amazing companies like the Every Company, onto that platform and produce and supply food locally, I think is the future. And going back to what Arturo was saying, this is what his customers will demand as well, so they demand, scale production, high quality production, but also localized production as well, so where the inputs are all at a local level and the product is produced locally and can access local markets, and that's what our footprint can provide. So, you can look at it in multiple different ways, but these are just some of the ways we looked at it, and we got very excited by it. But, with the work with Arturo, really went back into kind of first principles, and we've been very much focused on, unit economics and the ability for these new types of molecules to be able to compete with conventional is critically important. And that goes back to where scale and where the technology kind of comes into it. So the journey with Every and Arturo and team has just been about, iterating through that kind of validation, I guess, so, and that's the kind of the incredible journey we've been on over the last 2 years here.
Yeah, super excited. Yeah, I think just to piggyback off of what Patrick shared, we met, I think, almost 8 years ago. I was pitching AB InBev, 7 years ago when we were at Indie Bio, and he had just joined, and I was so intrigued by his background because he had a biotech background. He was at AB InBev. I think you were just about to start. I don't know if you had officially started there yet, and it was this really interesting evolution of seeing sort of Patrick kind of come in and then lead the charge in terms of how do we actually leverage some of the biggest companies in the world, not just on the consumer side, right, on the demand side, but how to actually fix and meet the demand from a supply standpoint. And I thought that was something that was really attractive to us, is like really having great champions that can build this as part of the core strategic roadmap for the company, right? For AB InBev, like now this is a core pillar, and that was very reassuring for us to see, like, look, this is a real growth engine for the business, and we know that that ultimately, like, they're serious about this, and that was really encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think, not to put too fine a point on it, none of this works if you don't hit unit economics, and scale is absolutely critical to reaching those unit economics. I mean, Arturo, you are working currently in some, let's say, more premium sectors, and so you can sort of support a green premium at this point. But how far can that take you, and what is it that you're seeing in your partnership with AB InBev that's really pushing those unit economics down?
Totally, exactly, and you hit the nail on the head. Like, food. The name of the game for food is scale. Right, it's unit economics and scale. They have to come together. And fortunately, food is also this massive market, right? Companies have been able to build multi-billion-dollar brands or companies just operating in the premium segments, right? Because even in the egg space, like you have this huge variety of caged eggs, cage-free, organic, free range, you name it, you have it, and they operate at very different price points, and they're all, especially some of the premium markets are still relatively, like the cage-free market, I think is closer to $10 billion. We'll be closer to $10 billion, and so there is for us a sense of how do we ride the cost curve, right, as we scale production, but ultimately knowing that is the really for us to shut down factory farms, for us to really transition the world to an animal-free food system, is that we need to be able to work with the biggest companies in the world that are touching the people in the bottom of the pyramid, right? So that our products are not just for the few, but also for the many, for everyone. And that's why we are also named Every. To pay, but I do want to stress, for us, unit economics is really, it is central and core, and that's likely going to be the number one KPI at the company for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And for us, one of the key pieces was making sure that we had a partner who could really enable that kind of unit economics. And we looked at actually quite a few different companies. And part of it was because our yields were there. Like the technology works, we know that it does, the yields are there, but to be able to really benefit from to really get the unit economics low enough, now we need to couple the great tech and the great yields with great scale.
Yeah. You actually, I think you hit on something really interesting that ties a lot of the scale alongside the unit economics, and then ultimately why we're all here, which is this question of sustainability. And Patrick, I know, ABI has your secret sauce really seems to be, this is a business that lives on the margins and knows how to manage margins. But I think there is like an elephant in the room around LCA and the true sustainability of this technology, precision fermentation. And I think you all have gone through a pretty extensive process. And can you talk a little bit about how your LCA that you're working to validate now on the chicken egg protein has stood up through your analysis and what you are doing in your process to really hone that even farther?
Yeah, so I guess, it was one of the key points that we looked at early on, and we continue to look at. I think, kind of BioBrew really, complements and builds on, our sustainability goals as a company in general around, our production. So it kind of works very well with that. But we looked at, the sustainability impact, the LCA impact of protein, we'll say brewed on the BioBrew platform, compared to conventional egg protein and also conventional dairy protein. And we've published those results on our website, but we kind of took a very careful approach to doing that in terms of making sure we were comparing like like to like, but across all of the kind of the LCA parameters, everything from climate change impact to water eutrophication, land use, and things like that. It is highly impactful, but also kind of with the caveat that being careful about the assumptions that we were making. So for example, looking at the ability to operate the facilities on renewable energy, for example, is critical to this. Obviously, looking at the kind of sustainability or the regenerative aspects of looking at feedstock production that goes into this. So all of these are kind of critically important. And then how we allocate the burden, the sustainability burden of this process, then and making sure that we allocate it properly amongst the product and amongst the byproduct as well. But it does stand up, it is highly sustainable at scale, so it is exciting. It's not the ultimate panacea, the ultimate solution. I think it's one of several solutions that are going to be needed, but very exciting in terms of the quality of the product that you're producing. Going back to Arturo's point, the cost at which you can produce it, and then also kind of, the sustainability impact then, of course, of that. And we also look broadly kind of sustainability in terms of local community, that type of thing, so building on local communities, making sure, going back to what I was saying earlier, around sustainable production, more distributed production, making sure that we protect, local supply chains and these types of things are important to us as well. But it is very exciting, from the work that we've done already.
It's I think, really interesting to think about, to take a look at. On your website, you have the LCA published, and a really nice kind of apples to apples comparison between conventional ag and the precision fermentation. So for anyone who wants to take a look, check that out. It's interesting. I think both of y'all have touched on the conventional ag and the food system in general. So I'm going to ask one very simple question. Do we want to get rid of animal ag, or can we live alongside animal ag? Yes or no, Arturo? I think I know your answer.
Well,
yes or no?
Industrial animal ag should not exist.
Okay.
In the 21st.
All right. Patrick?
Yeah, look, I agree with Arturo. For someone who grew up on a farm, a dairy farm, I've seen the positive impact of conventional agriculture, but I think we're pushing it beyond, where it was ever designed to go. So we need these new solutions, but I think ultimately we'll need all of these solutions. So agree with Arturo there.
Growing animals on top of each other. Right, where they will never see the sun, they will never walk on grass. It's unnecessary. We don't need to grow protein this way anymore. I don't see maybe chickens in your backyard. That kind of animal ag, may I think can exist, but ultimately, so much of those proteins are commodity products. Like stacking chickens on top of each other are not because people really care about the welfare of them. It's because they provide the cheapest form of egg protein or the cheapest form of chicken protein. And so now if there are cheaper ways of producing that, those technologies will become obsolete, like the horses. Right now we have them in New York, in the New York parks, but now we have cars for everything else. And so I think we're going to see, especially now that scale is going to come online across the sector, a rapid adoption of some of these technologies and the phasing out, ideally, of technologies that should not have a place in a just society.
And in our closing minutes here, Patrick, if you have any advice to other multinationals who may have their own unique capabilities to play in the climate space and do their part to help bring more sustainability into our economy, what is your maybe biggest learning or most important piece of advice you would give to somebody?
Yeah, a great question, Pei. I think there is a certain level of uniqueness with ABI, particularly from a cultural perspective. So as a company, we encourage all of our employees to dream big, and to be owners. And And this is about a big dream, right? And where we met people like Arturo, luckily enough, we had a similar dream, and we can achieve that together. So there's a lot of cultural nuance, I think, from an ABI perspective. And you layer on top of that, cost consciousness, efficiency, the ability to produce high quality product at scale, distributed footprint, and all of these things. So, but a big part of it comes down to culture, and I think us and Every have very similar cultures. We have a similar dream, and when you have that, when you have a common purpose, I think you can be unstoppable. So I think that's critically important. All the technology and all of this is fundamentally very important as well, but it all comes down to culture. So just having the ability to work with each other and to collaborate and be great friends and partners. I think through all the ups and downs of this relationship, we've always come back to the purpose and the dream, and that's what we're here to do. So having a look and seeing, okay, have you got all of those nuances, not just the tangible, but the intangible things as well, which are critically important. I think is my
Great.
advice.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Arturo. Thank you, Patrick. I think being mission-driven and culturally aligned is something we can all drink to.
Let's do it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.